Welcome to the Perfect 100, the podcast for BNI members who want to maximize their membership, deepen their impact, and grow their business through intentional networking. I'm your host, Tammy Zurak, a CliftonStrengths coach, longtime BNI leader, and one of the few members worldwide to maintain a perfect Power of One score. Each week, we'll explore the habits, mindsets, and everyday strategies of BNI members who are turning their membership into momentum. Hello and welcome back to the Perfect 100. I'm so excited to bring you my friend pcannon today with the Bartlett Chamber of Commerce. So we're going to dive right in. Pierce, tell us a little
Hi.
bit about you as a BNI member. How long have you been a BNI member? What
Yeah.
chapter are you in? And what seat do you hold in that chapter?
So I joined BNI Bartlett back in December, so I'm about 6 months in, and the seat I hold is the nonprofit seat.
Awesome. All right, so we're gonna roll into your 45-second. So I'm gonna get
Yeah.
my timer up on here so you can give us your best 45 seconds. I'll hold
Okay.
this up so you can see it, and
Okay.
when it ends, you end. All right,
Okay. All
you
right.
ready?
I'm
Here we
ready.
go.
Let's do it. All right. So my name is Pierce Cannon. I'm with the Bartlett Area Chamber of Commerce. If you are ready to grow, let Pierce know. That's my tagline. At the chamber, our job is to both connect businesses to each other, helping each other thrive while also getting those businesses connected with the community and potential customers. So we're connectors. With over 500 businesses in the Bartlett and Greater Memphis community area, we help facilitate long lasting, beneficial relationships. So our job is to not only help people get more transactions, but to focus on fostering relationships. And with that focus, it's going to inevitably lead to more transactions. Boom, right on time.
Awesome. Yeah, as the bell ringer in my own chapter, I always
Yeah,
appreciate when everybody finishes before they have to get dinged.
that's right. That's right.
So Pierce is my first guest that is not in my chapter, but I am the chapter success coach for his chapter. So I do have some knowledge of his experience in BNI, and I am also a Bartlett Chamber member and ambassador.
That's
Um,
right.
we have
We
some.
greatly appreciate that. Yeah. So an ambassador is a volunteer who shows up to ribbon cuttings and supports other businesses and all that. So we're greatly appreciative of what you do as an ambassador and a member too. So
Well, thank you, and
you're
same for
welcome.
you for BNI.
Yeah.
All right, so this is the power of. Well, we're going to talk about the power of one. This is the perfect 100. So I'm going to Leslie will bring up on the screen what your power one scores are, and
Oh,
you're
look at that.
only you're only, let's see, how many weeks? 18 weeks in. So you don't have 6 months worth yet, but
Okay.
that's the good news. Is
Yeah.
what's exciting about this is a lot of new members come in and they, how do I put this? They don't get the full experience, maybe because they don't dive in and do all the things,
Yeah.
because there's a learning curve, right? Uh,
Sure.
Oftentimes people don't understand, how do I maximize this? But I feel like your natural, even though maximizer is in my top 5 Clifton strengths, you maximize without having that in your top strengths because you have some other ones which we'll talk about later. But I do want to ask, because your score, and you were at 100, so you
I
were
was.
you were an elite member of the Perfect 100 the last month. You're at 95 now, which is amazing anyway for someone who's new. So just reading across, so the people who are not watching and only listening can hear. So you have a total score of 95 in the green. You have
Yeah,
20 points
yeah.
in attendance, 20 points in attendance, 20 points in referrals, 15 points in visitors, so yellow, and then 20 points in one-to-ones and 20 points in CEUs. So looking at all of those things, what do you think, which one of those comes most naturally to you?
So I love one-to-ones. I love getting to know somebody, getting to know their business, getting to know the types of referrals that they need. And so one-to-ones I feel like come most naturally, probably just the
Okay.
one-to-one experience.
Awesome. And you're green practically across the board. Are any of them, or have you found, even when you first started, have you found any of those challenging?
Yeah, I mean, visitors, obviously, that's in the yellow. Visitors is probably something that I want to improve on. Um, I came out pretty strong at the gate with CEUs. I dove in really quick, and then just the nature of my business is so it's just go, go, go all the time. So, but visitors is probably an area I want to improve in for sure because, we have quite a few seats that we haven't filled, and I have access to a lot of different people. And so I think bringing those people to, I did have a visitor a couple weeks ago. We're looking for a pest control person. And so I kind of dug into our membership directory at the chamber and I found someone that might be a good fit. But I think visitors is probably the one that I probably need to focus on because I want that to be green, no more yellow. I want that to be green. So,
I like it. All right. And let's go to the palms, Leslie. So the your personal palms, as I read across, so this is all of the weeks, each of the weeks independently listed, so you can kind of see across the time you've spent so far, kind of what happens where. So no absences. You've either had you've only had one sub, so you've been at present all of the times except for you had a sub, which is great. Referrals given inside 36, referrals given outside 12, which both of those are amazing. Referrals received inside 5, referrals received outside 4, visitors 4, one-to-ones. I might need my glasses on. I think that says 92. 18, well, actually, that's how many weeks do we have there? It's a little bit more than 18 because I just basically did from December 18th to May 28th. So that is far more than the weeks that the one that you're required, one per week. Thank
right.
you for closed business 2,633 and CEUs 47. So you had some big weeks in terms of referrals given. There's a couple of bigger blips, like January, you had 15 referrals given. And then again in March, you had 12. Tell me about those. How
Yeah.
are you, that big bulk at one time? What does that look like?
Yeah, I just, I was so excited to meet everybody. And so I think initially it was just kind of a blitz of one-on-ones and then pulling up our membership directory, finding out who good referrals for them are. And, not just saying, hey, here's a person you can contact, but either setting up a meeting with the person that they want to get to know or sending an email that just introduced that person to the person they want to get in contact with. So, I feel like right out of the gate, it was easy to do because I was trying to get to know everybody. And so that's probably why the bulk of those happened so quickly.
Yeah, and I think you're in a unique spot. I don't know that everyone recognizes that a chamber of commerce is a nonprofit. So you have a unique opportunity that I don't even know if people know that there's the first year for members for a nonprofit, assuming there's not someone else using that seat already, is right now is comped. So you can maximize your opportunity by having a chamber of commerce person in your chapter if you don't have one. And even if you do have a nonprofit in your chapter, oftentimes the mission of the chamber of commerce versus the mission of a lot of other nonprofits are different. So you're not getting a competing kind of circumstance. And that's the same in your chapter, right? You have another
Yeah.
nonprofit. So you
Yeah,
guys work together without
we do.
it being, a value add, if you will, to the chapter to have somebody. And what I think is unique about having a chamber is you have a Rolodex, right? And everybody in BNI wants to have a bigger amount of contacts that they can
Yes.
connect to. And I think that's a unique thing is every chamber of commerce has a Rolodex of businesses. That's what you're all about, right? Your mission is to help support businesses and economic growth in your city. So it's an amazing opportunity for everybody, you and us, because we can bring you people that you haven't met yet. And you're all obviously bringing us the same. So that's amazing. All right. So you may not have enough time yet but if you think about from the time you started in BNI till now, what has impacted your business, how you do business has there been anything notable that has changed since you've been in BNI?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. I've been in sales for 15 years. There's a difference in transactional relationships and actually focusing on the relationship. And so I think that focusing on seeing others thrive and do well first is really important because it shows people that you're serious and you're in it for the long haul. So I would say focusing on seeing others do well. I mean, in my business as the chamber director and membership, my goal is to help these people get connected and to help their businesses thrive. And so it was just an easy plug with BNI to do the same thing. So I would say focusing on relationships, not the transactions, even though we all know the transactions will come if you focus on the relationship.
Yeah, and that's going to speak to your strengths here in a minute when we get to that. There's a piece of what you said that is strongly related to one of your personal strengths. So we'll come back to that. But also thinking about just networking in general, have you ever made a mistake, looking back you've been networking for a long time if you're in the chamber.
Mhm.
Have you ever made any mistakes that you learned something from?
Yeah, I would say, confidence in your product is really crucial, right? So people can pick up on your confidence, and people can pick up on your sincerity. So desperation is not an attractive quality, right? And I know now, that the chamber brings a lot of value to the table. And so in the past, in other industries maybe that I've been in, I couldn't say the same thing. So my confidence wasn't as strong. But I would say I've learned that, hey, be confident and people are going to be attracted to that. And so, confidence, I would say.
Yeah, it's funny. I used to, so I worked in a large photography group as a mentor, a worldwide photography group, and under an educator. And one of the things that she, she called it, she didn't come from a sales background. She was a lifelong photographer, but you and I both come from, we've had the conversations, we come from a long sales background, and she calls it being stinky, which I think is, is a really good way to put it because
Yeah.
it's true when you're
Yeah.
selling a product that either you're desperate to sell or you don't believe in, you
Yeah.
can become stinky. And what that means,
Yeah.
I always relate it from when I was managing salespeople. It's like if you've ever walked up to, I've always had dogs, and we had
Mhm.
a German Shepherd Collie mix when I was growing up, and kids would come up to me. I would take them everywhere, take them on to walks and go to the playgrounds and whatever. And kids would always come up to me and want to pet him. And my question to them was, are you afraid of dogs? And
Mhm.
if they said yes, and then the answer was no, you cannot pet my dog, because he
Yeah.
would sense it and he would start
Yeah.
growling. And that
Yeah.
is what sales is like for people who are either desperate or don't believe in what they're selling. Is you get a stench.
Yes.
It is, dogs pick up on it, and it's not the smell, I don't think, but they smell the fear, so to speak, is what people say with dogs, and so do humans. We know
Yes.
when you're insincere or you're desperate for a sale. So if you're in either of those situations, it can be challenging. So that's always a great tip, is working around that. Is if you're not someplace where you believe in the product, then you don't need to probably be there, because it's not going to
Yeah.
help you, in the long run. All right, we're going to roll over. We hinted to your Clifton strengths, but let's look at what you have. So Leslie, if you could zoom in for me on the first three. So I will read those off to the people who are not listening. So your number one strength is belief. So belief, you have certain core values that are unchanging. Out of these values emerge a defined purpose for your life. Number two is woo. You love the challenge of meeting new people and winning them over. You derive satisfaction from breaking the ice and making a connection with someone. Sounds familiar to some things you've already said. Connectedness is number three. You have faith in the links among all things. You believe there are few coincidences and almost everything has meaning. Number 4 is communication. You generally find it easy to put your thoughts into words. You are a good conversationalist and presenter. And last but not least, number 5, responsibility. You take psychological ownership of what you say you will do. You're committed to stable values such as honesty and loyalty. So, when you took this and you got your results back, you've never taken it before. This episode is brought to you by Tammy Zurak Coaching. Ready to build your strengths, your business, and your brand? Visit tammyzurak.com and click the button to book your free strategy chat. Let's turn your passion into a thriving success. tammyzurak.com. What was your first reaction?
I called my wife. I called my wife and I said, "Oh my gosh, I just took this. Let me read this to you." And she was like, "Wow, that is to a T. That is you."
Nailed it.
So, yeah, so that was my initial reaction. Was like, "Man, I got to call Stephanie and tell her, like, you're not going to believe this. What do you think?" And then she confirmed. She was like, "Yeah, for sure.
That's you. Yeah.
That's you." So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and knowing you, and I when I looked at it, I was not surprised either that you have these things. And something you said earlier, transactional relationships. You mentioned that word. It was interesting because I was just watching a Gallup is. A lot of people have taken CliftonStrengths over, there's millions of people that have taken it. And Ariana Huffington was being interviewed by the CEO of Gallup, who runs all of the CliftonStrengths, and one of hers was strengths was connectedness in her top 5, and she used those exact words. She said that she learned early from her mom, actually, that transactional relationships are not fruitful relationships. You, as a connected person, and you also have communication and woo and belief and responsibility, which all kind of, when you each of those things work together. So you're
yeah,
unique. We've had previous guests on the podcast that have actually had all of the ones that you have, but in different orders and different with other strengths, but they all strengthen, they play off, the top 5 play off of each other. So
so,
seeing building those relationships is something that comes naturally to you, and recognizing that there's more to it, right? Is we're all
yeah,
connected, and that because you have strong belief. And I wanted to ask you about that. I know because again, we've had these conversations off of the podcast. I know you have strong belief in faith and things. How do you, because people that have belief generally live by a set of core values. So
sure.
how do you exemplify the mission in your work?
Yeah, I think foundationally, I think you have to kind of look at what your greatest motivator is. And for me, my greatest motivator is my family and my faith, which you kind of alluded to a second ago. Obviously, when I took the strengths test, the first thing I did was I called my wife. And then, yeah, my faith is really important to me too. It's kind of the compass that I follow, right? And so, the test really highlighted and showed me that it really has positive effects on other areas of the test. And so I was, just a little bit, I guess I was a little surprised, yet not surprised, but I get more out of somebody telling me, like, hey, this is a strength of yours, than just kind of making assumptions and that kind of thing. So, but, I think I think having a goal, I think having a motivator, something that grounds you is really, really important, and it connects everything together. So I think foundation is really important.
Okay. Do you feel like any of those gives you an edge in what you're doing?
Yeah, I would say connectedness, every person I believe that comes into my life, whether it's professional or personal, I believe they have a purpose, right? And, you don't always know what that purpose is, but I try to treat everybody to the best of my abilities with the same care and attention. And so the test probably showed me that that's one of the reasons why I may be successful attracting business partners and clients, is because I believe in giving everybody the same amount of attention and care.
Sure. And are any of them, do you think, underused at this point?
Yeah, belief is what was my number one, but I didn't realize how much of an impact it had, and so it kind of made me introspectively looked at, like, man, like, what is it that what is it about belief that makes it so strong? And what I realized is that one, if you don't have enough belief, you might shy away from doing things, that BNI encourages you to do, like inviting people to BNI, right? Like visitors, one-to-one, sharing. And so I think even though belief is my number one, I also feel like it's one that is a little underutilized for me, because I think that when you can open up to people, and sometimes whenever I have one-to-ones and we talk business, the idea is like, hey, let me learn about your business, let me, and then I'll tell you a little bit about mine. People just open up. They open up, and you talk about really cool stuff, and so it's not always a business meeting. Sometimes it just turns into a growth meeting. You're
Right.
both growing personally. So
Well, yeah, and we have, obviously we have core values in BNI, and one of those is givers. The big one is givers gain, right? So I
yeah.
think that we all you think we understand and kind of accept that if we buy into that concept that we will, right? Is if we continue to give to others, that eventually it comes back to us. And I've certainly, been in BNI for 10 years and I've seen that and lived that. So it's sometimes takes a little faith to wait for it to happen for you, but if you're
Sure.
doing the work, so to speak, then and you came in, guns a blazing,
Mhm.
that it will work out for you. And it looks like you've already received some opportunities for your own, what you're trying to accomplish with what you're doing at the chamber, so hopefully that's been a good thing for you.
Yeah, it has. It's been awesome. So something that I do for BNI members is we actually offer a 1 year 20% discount on your first year membership, because I just everybody in that room in our group is so motivated, and it's just something that we decided to do, that we wanted to get people connected, and so that's something that we do special for BNI. And it's just a way to give, like I said, and you just mentioned it, givers gain. Like, what are you willing to give? Well, we're willing to give, because we believe in our product, and we believe that we can help people. And so that's something special that we do for the people in the BNI group.
Yeah, and I think that connectedness also kind of comes into play. People who have connectedness often like to tell stories, and you mentioned getting to know you a little bit. And there's if you're not using the one-to-one forms, we call them there's a lot of different ways that they're called, the gains profiles, that kind of thing. You may be missing the boat, and the very first section of the one-to-one form essentially is getting to know somebody, right? As I had a one-to-one with somebody new in our chapter recently, where all we did is get to know each other. We literally
Yeah.
spent half an hour because we had so
Yeah.
many things in common that we went down the rabbit hole, and we
Yep.
were having lunch. And by the time lunch was over, we were like, we didn't even get to the business stuff. So the
Didn't
next
even
one
get to
is,
the business. Yep.
yeah,
I
but
love I
that's
love
where
it.
that's where it comes from, right? And I think yours and I, when we did one that was similar, is you kind of can go down that rabbit hole of getting to know someone, but that's probably more. I won't say it's more important, but it's as important, to
Definitely.
know who people are. Part of that know, like, and trust is, if I don't know who you are and I only know what you do, that's a big piece of the chunk of information that I need to refer my good clients to you. So that comes naturally to you. So I want to ask, kind of along those same veins, what is one piece of advice you would give someone trying to build a network? You have a big network. Obviously, that's kind of what you do for work. Is at the chamber, you're building a big network, and you're
Mhm.
always constantly building that, and you're doing the same through BNI. It's just an extension of that. What piece of advice would you give to people who are not natural networkers to do that?
Yeah. So when somebody joins the chamber, I typically tell them, look, if you're not going to get involved and do events and meet people, there's really not a good value there, and it's not worth your time, and it's not worth the investment to join. So this is kind of cliche, but my advice would be just do it. Put yourself out there, be bold, build relationships, and watch what happens, because magic happens. You got to do it. And it may be, and I've seen, BNI members come in who maybe they're a little shy. But a little piece of advice that I like to give whenever I'm doing, if I'm talking to someone about joining the chamber is I say, hey, look, when you come to our events, try to have at least three intentional.
Staying ahead in a world driven by technology is key. At Wisdom Integrators, we don't just solve problems, we create opportunities. Wisdom Integrators, connecting your world, solving your problems.
Conversations. Like when we do events, sometimes there's 20 people there, sometimes there's 80 to 90 people there. And so it can be a little overwhelming and it's a little daunting. What I like to do is do like a strategy meeting before we do an event with the person who's maybe just joining and saying, hey, who do you want to meet? And then if they're there, making that introduction. But I always say, have at least three intentional conversations with people and just get the ball rolling. That way it's not daunting. It's not a huge task. You don't want to be the business card guy, right?
Right.
You don't want to hand out, hey, here,
Yes, we
because
hate those people.
people, yeah, you're like, what are you going to do with that business card? I have no idea who this person is. Who is this business card I just met, right? But if you have three intentional conversations with people, it's a lot more fruitful. And then you just grow from there, right? You have those conversations, then you build on that, you schedule a one-to-one, and then maybe there's a transaction that occurs, and then you do that with someone else and you just keep doing it. So just do it, just put yourself out there, get uncomfortable. And then once you're uncomfortable, it's going to eventually become comfortable, the more you do it, for sure.
Right. I love that. Yeah, my being married to somebody who started a business last fall and is not a natural networker. I'm kind of the polar opposite. I don't have a challenge. Even though your strengths are not the same as mine, I am not afraid to work a room, and
Yes,
that's one of the things that you have is connectedness and communication. You work a room. You're the challenge for people with high communication and connectedness sometimes is that they don't spend enough time talking or listening more. So it's more talking and less listening can be the blind side of those things. So sometimes it's harder. And I have high relator, and my husband does too. Relator is we want to get to know somebody deeply, right? We want to really dive in and get to know somebody, and that can be challenging in a room where you've got 80 people.
yeah,
So I drag him along. He joined the chamber, and I drag him along to events, and I give him that same goal that you said is I want
yeah,
you to get, I would like to see, it's an assignment. I would like to see 3 business cards, and I would like to know a little bit about those businesses. And his challenge is pulling him away from that one conversation because he wants to go deeper, 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 where, there's 80 other people in the room we need to connect you to. And little over time things have changed, and now he's starting to recognize that when he goes to events that people know him, and he makes it a point. We went to one yesterday, and I said, who are you talking to that you don't know? And he immediately went and started to talk to somebody else. So it
that's
gets
great.
easier over time. And my favorite question, and this applies to BNI too, is when someone comes into the room, they may feel that way, right? If we've got 30, 40 people in a chapter and you're new and you're introverted and you're not naturally an open communicator, that's overwhelming. And
It
so
is.
if we can, in my chapter, what we try to do is seat you with like people. So meaning
Hmm.
we put you in your power team. So if you're a tradesperson, we seat you with other tradespeople so that you feel a kinship with the people around you. So as they're all speaking, you're hearing, okay, here's somebody I can do business with, and here's somebody else, and they're right next to me versus across the room. We've all probably been in that circumstance where we heard somebody say, I do this, and you're like, ooh, that's somebody I need to meet. But they're clear across the room and then they're gone. Out when the thing ends, they're out the door. You never got a chance to meet them. But if they're sitting right next to you or two seats down, you can slide them a card and say, can you wait? I want to talk to you after, and it doesn't feel as awkward. So the question I always ask people though is, who'd you come here to meet?
Yeah.
Um, you
Oh,
know,
that's a
and
great question.
and they look at me like I'm like, what? What do you mean? And I'm like, you
Yeah.
came here with the intention of hoping to build your business. So who
Yeah.
is going to help you do that? Who would you like to meet? And because I know so many people, even if they're not in the room, I know other people that they could meet, right? So, but in our chapters, we immediately know we can we know in advance because on the app it tells us who's coming to visit. We can look and see what profession they are, and we actually put a visitor's tent card in between the rest of the people that would be on their power team and seat them there intentionally, but we will take them and introduce them in that open networking section so that they don't feel awkward and they do get to meet somebody that they're like, oh, I should be a part of this, right? So it's a very cool thing when everybody I ever ask that question to looks at me funny like, oh, that's a really good question. I
Yeah.
hadn't thought of that, but then they think
Well, it's
about it and they're like,
intention.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
I
not
mean,
about
you gotta have intention.
yeah, and it's not about me because when you go and that it goes back to your business card person, where you if we've all been to the open networking thing or the whatever event where somebody's just walking up going, "Hi, I'm so and so, and here's my card," and you're like, "Okay," it's like I don't know you from a whole, and they don't tell you
Yeah.
anything. They just walk off and give somebody else some cards, and you're like, that was not a good example of how to network. And you don't do anything with it because it's me, me, me. Here's my card. Here's it's all
Mhm.
about me. But if I ask you, who did you come here to meet? It's about you. And if I connect you, now that giver's gain starts to come into play is, wow, this person really took a minute to listen to what I was here for and made a connection. Right.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite things to do. All right. So when you look at yourself as a chamber director versus other chambers, there's lots of
Mhm.
chambers,
Mhm.
even in our area here, and people can be listening to this anywhere, but there are, I don't know, 5 or 6 of them that you could become a part of. What sets you apart from what you guys are doing there?
That's a great question. Bartlett is a really special town. It's the 11th largest city in Tennessee. There's a lot of economic development that's happening. We have one of the highest ranked school systems in the state that's won multiple awards. And there's just a lot going on. Bartlett, we have a great mayor, and he came up with a tagline called Hometown Proud, and it's very catchy, but it really describes, I mean, like, I've lived here 37 years. I've lived here my whole life, so it's all I've known. So I love Bartlett front to back. As far as comparing it to other chambers, I think every chamber has their own strengths, right? Everybody has their own brand. I think for us, we've just got a little special touch. We really care about seeing the community do well, and that business community, we want to see them thrive. We want to give them special attention. We want to get them connected to other businesses, that could be great referral sources. And we want to get them in front of their clients. We want people, some of these people just need people to walk through their door. And so if we can promote them, and if we can have an event where people may not even know they're here, that's a big, I talk about that a lot in these, if I'm having a conversation with either a new business or a business that's been here for a while. I would say, hey, how do you feel like your footprint's doing? And I'll pull up Google reviews, and I'll say, hey, do you have a Facebook page? And sometimes the answer is no, and sometimes the answer is yes. So you find out different things. But I would say, and I was a consultant for a little bit and used to work with companies as a consultant and would just help them in different areas, whether it was marketing or sales. I love sales, so a lot of times it was focused on that. But, like, everybody needs help with sales. Everybody wants to do more. Everybody wants to grow, and everybody wants to see. I think this town, everybody wants to see everybody do well. And so I think that's what makes Bartlett different is we all care about each other. And it may be true for other communities too. I don't know. But having been a resident for 37 years, I'd say it's a special place. And the chamber really does care about everybody thriving and doing well.
Yeah, and as a business owner in Bartlett, I can say that having not been a part of the chamber until I met you, it does make a difference. I've been going to because I became an ambassador, I've been going to all the things, and which is not a challenge for me because I naturally can throw myself into a uncomfortable space where I don't know anybody and make friends. But I think that that connectedness that you have and create helps. That's a unique talent that you have, and why you're different is you. It just goes back to brand, right? Is I teach branding, and part of what makes a chamber good is the people running it. So if you're
Mm.
not connected and you're not connecting us, then there's no reason to be a part of it. And I've recognized that there's a lot. I've lived in this city for almost 16 years. I think it actually is 16 years now, and I've never been as much dialed into what's happening here and what people are thinking than I have been since I've been in the chamber. And,
Yeah,
one of the other phone calls you made after you got your results back from your assessment was to me. And
I
your
did.
first reaction was, you and I have been talking about, wouldn't the city be better if the people running it knew what their strengths were? And I was listening to another podcast from Gallup yesterday after you called me about that, and just happened to fit synonymously into what we were talking about. But they were talking about, what if the what if the politicians ran on what was good about them versus
Mm,
what's bad about everybody else? What if elected officials had their top 5 strengths and said, this is why you should elect me, because these are my
yeah,
main things. And right. And this falls into business too, is why would you work with me? Because this is my, set of strengths. This is what I bring to you. And I serve as a politician, I serve the public. So why I would, instead of going kind of the negative route that a lot of politicians like to go, what if that was the case? And then next level is, what if they all work together on what they were good at? And so,
yeah,
what if city government operated on everybody maximizing their strengths, and
yeah.
imagine what that would do for the community, the businesses, all the things. So, my brain just sort of goes down that track of like, oh, that would be really cool. I just thought it was fun that you had mentioned that to me, because we were talking about the various politicians and how that could make a difference.
Yeah, and we are so fortunate here in Bartlett. We have a great police department, we have a great fire department. We have all these things that make Bartlett a great place to live. And I would say that Bartlett is, for the most part, really, really good at recognizing where we're strong. I mean, right now, the police department is working closely with the city of Memphis because, whenever you think of Memphis, you don't think about good things, right? You think
Right.
about crime and you think about all this other stuff. And so Bartlett sometimes gets lumped into that, but there are a lot of things that are going well. And so that's why we are working with, I say we because I'm a resident, but I'm just saying people want to know what makes Bartlett special and why is our crime down and how is our response time so fast and all these things. And it just starts with a conversation, like you just said. And so I do think strengths do come into play and people want to know why we are so strong. And so I do think that they do a good job of doing that, and then also wanting to give to the greater MSA, the greater Memphis community, and help them perform better in areas that they need better performance in. So
Well, and I think you can say we, because the Chamber of Commerce certainly drives what makes the city that you're in great, right? If businesses aren't thriving, then there's, a lot of things going wrong. So yeah, you can definitely own the we. So my last question for you is, what has been the most impactful thing from our conversation today for you that you will bring into, what you're doing with your life?
um, well, at first, I just want to say thank you for having me on the podcast, for offering the test to me, because I want to know where I can improve. I want to know also what my strengths are, right? I mean, that's what it's all about, is like, how do you capitalize on your strengths? And so for me, it really was a blessing. And I mean that. It was a blessing to take the test and see the results. It was truly an eye-opening experience. And so, I'm going to take the test very seriously, and you can count on me to sing your praises, because I think what's going to happen next is we're going to see an explosion of more growth, because we know what we're good at. We know what our brand is. And, Pierce knows a little bit more about himself and how he can help the organization he works for. And he also knows areas he can improve in. So I would just say, today has been just it's been fun. I've had a lot of fun discussing this stuff. My degree was actually in psychology from the University of Memphis, and so there was a point in time where I thought I wanted to get into industrial psychology, where you perform the tests for industrial companies and Fortune 500 companies and doing all that stuff, but I'd never taken the CliftonStrengths test, and so I just want to say thank you for inviting me to take it and learning more about myself, and then how I can improve, and so that I can be a better servant in my position with the chamber.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And we'll leave it there for today. But if you enjoy listening to the stories of BNI members and you want to hear more, be sure to subscribe, whether you're on the Perfect 100 website or you're listening to us on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you're on YouTube, leave us a comment. And that's all we have for today. So thank you. And we'll see you next time on the Perfect 100. Thanks for listening to The Perfect 100. If today's episode sparked a new idea or inspired you to show up differently in your chapter, share it with your team. And be sure to subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if you're curious about your own Clifton strengths and how to bring out the best in yourself or your chapter or your business, head to TammyZurak.com to learn more about building your superpowers into everything you do. Keep showing up, keep connecting, and keep building your Perfect 100.